The Pregnant Ghost in Cabin 13. Welcome to this house. Today, we are exploring Cabin 13. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. One of the scariest types of ghosts are the ones who are angry. Some are lost, but the most terrifying ones are the ones who died with unfinished pain. A young woman is running through the forest. She's holding her stomach, which is abnormally large. She's desperate for help, but no one can hear her cries. Eventually, she stumbles upon a log cabin and bursts through the door. She collapses onto the floor and whispers, "He left me here. He left us to die." She looks down at her belly and cradles it as the light fades from her eyes and her skin grows pale. The woman gives one final shuddering breath and dies. Evan and Rachel are madly in love. Evan recently proposed and Rachel happily accepted. They decide to plan their future together and rent a cabin by a lake. Evan wants somewhere remote where they can spend some quality time together away from the rest of the world. Rachel is more than happy to oblige. When they arrive, the surroundings are beautiful. There's a lake, trees, and an isolated cabin. It's perfect. They excitedly walk around the property, taking in the sights and sounds. Later that evening, they turn on the television, but it doesn't get any stations. The couple laughs it off and decides to play some board games instead. When they're finished playing, they head to bed. Rachel has nightmares about the previous owner of the cabin. In her dream, she sees a ghost of a woman crying in the corner of the bedroom. She seems very sad and distraught. Rachel shakes off the vision and tries to fall back asleep. She thinks it was just a dream, nothing more. The next morning, Rachel tells Evan about her nightmare. He tries to reassure her, telling her that there's no such thing as ghosts. Still, she can't help but feel uneasy. Later that day, while Evan goes for a hike, Rachel stays behind at the cabin. She walks around to find something to do when she notices an old wooden chest in the corner. She walks over to it and opens it. Inside, she finds a diary and a photograph. She pulls the items out and examines them closely. The diary is filled with entries from a young girl describing her daily life. Rachel feels a connection to the girl and decides to read the entries aloud. As she does, she hears a noise outside and jumps in surprise. She quickly closes the diary and hides it under the table. Moments later, Evan returns and asks what she was doing. Rachel tells him that she was just looking around. She hides the diary and photograph under a piece of furniture. Evan and Rachel spend the rest of the day together enjoying the peace and quiet of the cabin. As night falls, the power goes out. They use candles for light and try to stay positive. Suddenly, Rachel's eyes widen in horror. She points to the photograph she found earlier. In the picture, the woman appears to be staring directly at them. Rachel tells Evan about the photograph, and he laughs it off. They finish their dinner and prepare for bed. In the middle of the night, Rachel wakes up to sobbing. She sits up in bed and looks around. At first, she thinks it's Evan, but then she realizes he's sleeping peacefully beside her. She gets out of bed and follows the sound. She finds the source of the crying in the corner of the room. The crying is coming from the photograph. She reaches out to touch it, and her fingers go straight through. Rachel screams in terror as the photograph floats off the wall and lands on the ground. As the sun rises, Rachel tells Evan everything that happened. He doesn't believe her, so she shows him the photograph. It's covered in scratches and the woman's eyes seem to glow red. Evan is skeptical, but he agrees to look into it. He asks the locals about the cabin's history, but they either pretend to not know anything or give vague answers. Frustrated, Evan and Rachel decide to move out. On their way out, they pass by the old chest. Rachel feels compelled to open it and finds the diary. She begins reading the entries aloud and discovers that the girl is writing about her pregnancy. The entries become increasingly disturbing as the girl describes feeling trapped and desperate. One entry reads, "I'm 8 months pregnant, and my boyfriend won't take responsibility. I feel like I have no options. I wish someone could help me." Rachel feels a deep sense of empathy for the girl and vows to uncover the truth behind her story. Suddenly, the temperature in the room drops. The wind outside picks up, and the candles begin to flicker. Rachel feels a presence behind her and turns around. To her horror, she sees the ghost of the girl from her dream standing behind her. The ghost approaches Rachel and whispers, "Help me, please help me." Before Rachel can respond, the ghost disappears. Shaken by the experience, Rachel runs outside to catch her breath. As she stands there, she notices a small change in the landscape. There's a faint outline of a grave in the grass. Intrigued, Rachel decides to investigate. She walks towards the grave and kneels down. She brushes away the dirt. She reveals a small wooden cross. It's worn with age, but the inscription is still visible. It reads, Sarah Williams, 1968 to 1987. Rachel realizes that this must be the girl's grave. Determined to find out what happened to her, Rachel visits the local library. She speaks to the librarian and learns that Sarah Williams lived in the cabin with her boyfriend Michael. According to the locals, Michael abandoned Sarah when she became pregnant. Desperate for help, Sarah reached out to her family, but they refused to take her in. Left with no support, Sarah gave birth to her baby girl alone in the cabin. When her family found out about the baby, they convinced Sarah to give up her daughter for adoption. Heartbroken, Sarah agreed. Days later, Sarah's body was found in the cabin by the police. The cause of death was unknown, but they ruled it as a tragic accident. What happened to the baby girl is still a mystery. Overwhelmed with emotion, Rachel returns to the cabin. She walks into the bedroom and sees the ghost of Sarah sitting on the bed. Sarah looks at Rachel with gratitude and thanks her for uncovering the truth. As dawn approaches, Sarah's form begins to fade away. She smiles at Rachel and says, "Finally, I can rest in peace." With that, she disappears. Rachel feels a sense of closure knowing that Sarah's spirit can finally move on. However, she can't shake the feeling that something is still missing. Later that day, Rachel and Evan return to the cabin for one last visit. They say their goodbyes and head back to their car. As they drive away, Rachel notices something strange in the rearview mirror. The photograph of Sarah and Michael appears to be floating above the cabin. Rachel and Evan exchange a surprised glance, but there's no time to react. The photograph suddenly flies off the wall and smashes on the ground. Rachel gasps in shock as the image of the ghostly couple appears in the mirror once more. They stare back at Rachel and Evan with haunting eyes. Shaken by the experience, Rachel and Evan speed away from the cabin. As they drive, they can't help but feel the presence of Sarah and her baby girl. They know that the spirits of the cabin will haunt their dreams forever. Upon discovering the tragic fate of Sarah and her unborn child, Rachel and Evan felt compelled to honor their memory. They contacted the local authorities and requested that the remains be properly identified and buried. Although it took some time, the authorities agreed to exhume the bodies and give them the respectful burial they deserved. The news of the discovery spread throughout the small town, and people began to share their own experiences with the cabin. Many had encountered strange phenomena there, but no one had ever taken it seriously. Now, with the confirmation of Sarah's existence, everyone realized that they had been living in denial. Years after the haunting events at the cabin, Rachel and Evan decided to return to the lake. They wanted to pay their respects to Sarah and her baby girl and see if the cabin had been restored. To their surprise, the cabin had been torn down and a new one had been built in its place. Overwhelmed with emotion, they realized that the spirits of the cabin were finally at peace. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch our other videos.